All right, we're back, and it's COMP305, Week 6, Lesson 6, Part 4, it's Game Programming 1. Okay, and we just left off talking about the player. I've uploaded the player controller and everything about the player. I made him into a prefab. I'm launching Unity again, and again, I turn down Unity whenever I upload to GitHub because there's a bit of lag. And there's some other meta files, meta tags that happens with Unity if you have Unity open. So I'm going to make the enemy now, right? And by the way, if you notice, I haven't touched any of the tiles yet because that's not important right now. The most important thing is if I've got my enemy going, I make one enemy right now for me, right? And I'll make the player, and then I'll make an exit for level 1, right? Okay, so let's do this. So here's my player. I don't need my player in the scene, so I'm going to get rid of my hero. This is another real good reason to get rid of to have a prefab that's a hero, so I can always add him back in, and he's got all his other effects. So right now there's nothing in the scene, just the platform. Let's do one more thing for the platform, just because where it is, I want to make it so that the platform is right at the bottom right now. It's kind of bigger than the scene. I want to move this so it's a little bit lower, so it kind of doesn't show any kind of ground at all. One of those. And we'll also make it so the platform is a little bit taller. Right, so because right now the platform is pretty small, we'll just make it a little bit taller. There we go. If I go back to the game, it looks like this. So it's like a bottom ground level. There's no color to this thing or anything. We're gonna kill this platform in the end anyway, right? But for now, it's just testing. All right, so I want to add my enemy to the scene now, right? So remember, my enemy has an idle state. I'm just gonna make this a little larger for now. And my enemy has a run state. Let's take a look, right? Here's my enemy. He's got an idle, a jump, and a walk. That's what he's got, right? Let's get my enemy idle in there. So I'm going to kind of drag and drop my enemy idle sprite in here. There he is. There's my enemy, right? He's a little scarecrow, right? And my idle, I'm going to rename this thing from idle, obviously. Rename, right, to enemy. Right, just going to call this enemy. Here's my enemy sprite. Now I want to have my jumping and walking and all that kind of stuff come into play, right? Remember what we did last time to get all that going, right? Let's do all my animation and all that stuff right away, right? So I've got my idle, I got my enemy. Let's test my enemy out. Right now he's got a sprite render that's an idle. I need to add other things in here for him. I need to add in a physics 2D, rigid body 2D material, right? Let's add the same mass approximately as my player. And if I forgot what that was, I can always go to hero. I can go to my hero prefab. Here's my hero. And if I click on it, I can see that it was 0.04. So if I want to give him the same kind of mass and the same gravity scale of 200, so 0.04 and 200, I can do that for the enemy. So let's just do that right away. So we know that that's what it should be. 0.04. And a gravity scale of about 200. Okay, cool. So I've kind of got it. I also don't want him to rotate on the z-axis. I don't want him to fall over, ever, right? So that's got to freeze. And I also want to add a collider. Let's add a box collider to this guy. So I'm going to go physics 2D, box collider, right? And let's go into the scene and see what it looks like. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to frame select him. So he's right there. That's a pretty good collider if you look at him, right? Like right now, my collider's pretty good. The hat is kind of big, and there's a bit of space in the back, like his back, right? So what I want to do is I want to move this in a little bit. So of course, I'm going to edit my collider. I'm going to bring this in so that the hat sticks out just a touch, but it's not going to really affect the collision. And also, you know what? The top of the hat doesn't really represent the top of his head. If I want my player to jump on his head or something like that, which is probably the Mario type effect, I want to drag his collider so that it's almost like approximately hitting his head. So the hat's sticking out. That's okay. Same thing for the front. His collider in the front, I mean, right now his feet are there, but you know what? I want his hand and his feet. So his foot's going to stick out just a little bit, right? But I want his collider to be closer so that his hand is the one that's going to touch you when he's running. So kind of a tighter little collider. Sometimes it's better to do that, and then obviously you can use a more complicated collider like a polygon collider, which will wrap around this guy. And sometimes that doesn't always work, especially for the top. If I want to jump something on top of him, a flat collider like this works better. All right, so it's good. So I got his collider. I've got his rigid body 2D. I mean, if I just play the game now, he should just land on the platform, yeah? And there he is. Let's try that again. So I'm going to kind of move him up a little higher, right? So I'm going to use the grab to move this guy a little higher and then make him fall, right? Let's just zoom out so you can see that. So I'm going to kind of move him up and make him fall, right? So he's just falling down.
What's the gravity scale?
Gravity scale is 200. So again, I'm kind of, if I play this guy again, and let's just move this guy a little higher, so he's going to fall into the scene for us as an example. And if I play, there, he falls in the scene. So he's got the same kind of gravity and everything else as the player. We've almost got our enemy now. Really. I mean, if we made him stationary and the player had to avoid him, not just to jump over him, that would be like, silly. We want him to be moving around though on the platform. So how do I do that? Well, first I need an animation, right? I want to hook up all my animations first and create that animation state and all that stuff that we did before, right? So I'm going to go back to the enemy sprite, and I've got my jump animation. So right now I'm probably going to make him jump eventually. Maybe I'll make him jump on the player's head, right? Try and make him jump on the player's head occasionally, at random, right? When he's close by. So first I'll get my jump animation and kind of put him into the scene. There's my jump. And I'll do the same thing with my walk. My walk cycle is what I'm going to use first. So there's my walk, right? And to test this out, just to see what it looks like, so you can see the walk cycle and the jump, or sorry, the walk and the jump. Let's see it in real time. So this is what it looks like right now. Okay, so that's the animation that I'm going to get. That's pretty good. So bang, 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 bang. Right? Look how fast he moves. So that's kind of that's probably as fast as I want this guy to ever move. I don't want him to move much faster than that because then he's going to be too fast for my player. Right? So bang, 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 bang. Right? So I'm going to have to choose to make him a little slower when he's running. Okay? Those are good animations. I don't need these. Of course, whenever I create an animation like that, when I drag and drop them into the scene, I also create these additional game objects, which I don't need. So I'm going to just get rid of them. But what I do need is the product of my little work, which is my jump animation and my walk animation. I also have an idle, which is kind of weird, right? I have an idle. So I got to be able to transition across from my idle animation, which I don't have an idle animation right now. I just have a single frame, right? I want to move from my idle animation into my walk, just like I did before. And I have a walk animator, right, which I have right here. And I also have a jump. So I don't need the jump. Let's get rid of that. That's the animator controller I'm talking about here. And I don't need the walk. I'm going to make my own for the first time because we haven't done that yet. I do need my walking and jumping clips, though, for my enemy. And I'm going to put that back in the animations folder that I created last time. So I'm going to take my walk and I'm going to rename this thing to enemy walk. That's my enemy walk clip. And now this is my enemy jump. So I got my enemy walk, my enemy jump clip. I'm going to take these two clips and move them into my clips folder. My clips folder now has enemy jump and walk. I've got my coin animator and my coin clip and my player idle, jump, and walk. So those are all the clips that I've got now in my animations. Right? My controller, I only have two controllers. I have my coin controller and my player controller. Let's make a controller from scratch, which we're going to call enemy controller. Right? So I'm going to right click here. We're going to create a new animator controller. And we're going to name this thing enemy. Right now it's empty. If I double click on this thing, it's going to take me into my animator, and if you notice, look what I've got here. I've got nothing. So I need to add an empty clip. And the way to do that, of course, is to right click, and I need to create a new state, right? Which is a new state from empty. Automatically, when I create my first state, I have a line that goes from entry to my new state, right? Let's rename this state idle, right? It's my idle state. And I need some kind of motion for it, right? Okay. But here's the problem. If I go to my enemy, I don't have in my clips any kind of clip that's a motion that's steady, right? So here's my going back to my enemy, how do I create an idle state from my enemy? Right? How do I do that? Can I drag my sprite across? Well, no, my sprite's not a clip, right? So I need to create another clip. And I can't do that by dragging and dropping my sprite because my sprite only has one object. So I need to create a clip from scratch. And of course, the way to do that is to go to animation, right? And I want to create a sprite from my enemy, or a clip from my enemy. And the way I'm going to do that, of course, is I'm going to click on create. So now what it does, this is the trick with this, so watch it carefully, is under enemy is also going to create an animator, right? That's okay, I'm going to leave it as new animation for a second. Just bear with me while I do this. Save. Now I've got a position for this new animation, right? If you notice this new animation, I'm going to do it again in a second. Way at the bottom here is the clip. That's the clip name. Okay, let's do it again one more time. So I'm going to delete this thing, delete it, and let's try it again. So I've clicked on my enemy, and I can, if you notice, I'm in my animation window. There's two different windows: the animator window, which is my state machine, and the animation window, which is my clips, my movie clips, right? I want to create a new animation movie clip. So create, and I want to put this in the right spot, which is going to go now into, open this up. It's going to be under Assets, Animation, Clips. That's where I want it to go. And I want to call this Enemy Idle. And click Save. Yeah. Huh? Sure. Let's do it again. So let's get rid of this, my animator. And let's go into clips. And let's get rid of my enemy idle for a second. I'll do this from scratch again. One more time. So I click on my enemy. Number one, this is the steps. When I click on my enemy, you notice in the animation window, there's two windows, Animator and Animation. Animation is my movie clips. I need to click the Create button. Create. It's going to ask me where I want to create the animation. I'm going to navigate to my Clips folder that I created in my assets and call this Enemy Idle, because that's the clip I want to make, right? And I want to save. When I do that, I get a new Enemy Idle clip, and I also get an extra Animator controller, which I don't need right now. So I can get rid of that. I already have an enemy controller right here. But right now, my enemy controller is empty, right? Because I don't have any kind of, in my enemy controller itself, I don't have, here's my animator, right? My animator doesn't have anything in it, so I have to add something new, right? Because so far, my animator for my enemy, so we go back to controller, so here's my enemy, it's empty, right? I can search around as much as I want. I'm not going to find anything because there's nothing in there, right? Let's add in, and how come I can't add in a clip, right? Even if I try and search around here and stuff like this, it won't matter because, and here's the trouble that I make for myself, right? In my coin, if I click my coin, right? If I double click my coin, I see in my animator itself, right? This is where it should come through, right? My coin animation. If I double click my player, well, this is where you expect it to come through, but not so. It has to be part of the enemy animator. I don't have one. I have to connect it somehow. So let's do that. So my enemy animator has to be connected to my animator controller. Once I've done that, right, then I have access to my idle state, which is empty right now. There is no clip, but I do have a clip. I have this new clip that I made, but I haven't really defined what the clip is. Let's go back into that clip, my enemy idle clip. So I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to go into my animator, my animation for my enemy. I've got my, and hey, where is it again? How come I got no clip? Even though I've got my enemy idle clip here, right? It's not latched to anything, right? And this is the problem people run into. They're like, hold on, I'm going around in circles, Tom. How come it's like this? So let's complete my enemy animator clip before we get rid of my enemy animator, the one it generates for us. Otherwise, we can't do anything, right? I'll show you this again. So let's get rid of my enemy idle clip, delete. And now I'm going to go into my, I want to create a new one. So I'm going to click my enemy, click create, choose enemy idle. I'm not going to delete it this time, right? Which is going to go in my clips. And when I do that, here it is, right? And I want to look at my, if you look at my animation, there's nothing in there, right? Well, I've got to attach a sprite in here, some kind of sprite. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to sprites, and I'm going to go to my enemy sprite. By the way, all this is kind of academic. And I'm going to go right to the beginning and add in a sprite, my first scene. So now I have my enemy idle clip, right? All I've done is pull in a sprite. Now here's the samples. The samples are 60. I don't need a sample that's 60 because he's just doing one thing. So I can even cut this right down to like 1. So I'm going to change my sample to 1. That's all he's doing. There's no animation really. I'm just using this as a placeholder for my idle state. Cool. All right, so I'm going to save that. And now when I go back to my clips, if you notice I have my enemy idle clip. In my controller, I have my enemy controller, right? So here's my enemy animator controller. And what I want to do is I want to select my clip, which is my enemy animator. Go to my clips here, and here's my enemy idle. I'm going to attach that one. There we go. And now I can get rid of this one. So there's my enemy idle clip, right? And I've attached it to the idle animation. If I was to play this one right now, it's the way it is, right? He's just playing idle. Can't tell anything, but I need a state to come from. This state, this idle state, if I go look at my animator, I need to create the same kind of parameter I did last time. I'm going to call it anim state. It's going to be an integer type parameter. Here's anim state. And it's going to start at 0, right? Again. The 0 state, the idle state. Now, I need to add in my other animations. So I'm going to go back to clips, and I'm going to add in my walk animation. That's the first one that I want for my enemy. Enemy walk. Enemy walk already has a clip associated with it. I want to make a transition from idle to walk. So I'm going to go make transition. There it is. And this transition is going to move from, again, it's going to change my anim state to make, if it's equal to 1, it's going to move, same kind of idea with the player. It's going to move into walk state. And I'm also going to make a transition from here back to here, which we're going to say, when I click on this arrow, that my anim state is going to be equal to 0. So when I go up, my anim state's equal to 1. When I come down, back to idle, my anim state's equal to 0. I make sure that this has exit time is unchecked, because that means it's going to wait for my animation to finish before I move, which is bad. And I've got an animation for my enemy. I'm not going to add the jump in there, or I could, but it'll be the same thing that we did last time. So let's add the jump. We're probably going to set all this up first. We won't use the jump until a lot later. So I'm going to kind of add in my enemy jump. And just as a review, here's my enemy jump. Remember that I can go from idle to jump and from enemy walk to jump. So let's add that in. So I'm going to kind of right-click, make a transition, right, and unclick this, the transition behavior. So let's go back there. There we go. Has exit time. And my enemy jump, right, as an example, right, I want to transition back, so make a transition back to here. And when I transition to my enemy jump, it's going to change my anim state, or my anim state should be 2, just like we did last time, just as a standard. So they're equal to 2. And when I go back, right, my anim state then is got to be equal to 0, because I'm going back to idle, right, with no transition time. I can also move from enemy jump to walk, right? And I can also move from walk back to jump, right, if I need to. Same as the player. And I'll get rid of these things here, these checkboxes, just so that there's no transition marker. Cool, so I've got my animation states defined. I got to basically, one thing I need to do is, one thing I missed was I've got to make sure my parameter is checked. So when from enemy walk to enemy jump, I have to change my anim state to equal to 2 because I'm jumping. And when I go back from 2 enemy jump to enemy walk, it's got to change my anim state to equal to 1. Right? So you've seen that a couple times now. So all I'm doing is when the number 0, 1, and 2 is something I've assigned. I'm saying 0 is idle, 1 is walk, 2 is jump. And I'm checking to see if this property is changed in order for me to affect the animation. Okay, cool. Saving everything. I've got my animator. Now, you're not going to see any difference because when I run this thing right now, he's just idle. Right? So nothing's changing right now because I haven't had, there's no script involved for this guy. All he's doing right now is he's just idle. Right? But I want to say that when he's grounded, I want him to run whenever he's grounded. When he's not grounded, I want him to be idle or jumping, right? Depending on what he's doing. So I need to have some of the same, almost the same kind of thing as we did with the player to give him a little bit of life, a little bit of AI, right? But not too much because when we start talking about enemy AI, it goes a little crazy. We can spend, the next week talking about enemy AI. Right, so let's not do that. Let's get into very simple scripting. So I'm going to add a new script. I'm going to do the traditional way this time by clicking the Add Component button. I'm going to add a new script on the bottom, which I'm going to call Enemy Controller. Just less clicks. And it's going to go into my assets in my basic asset area. I want to pull this into scripts. There it is. And in scripts, I want to double click on my enemy controller and add in some of his logic. Now we're going to do some of the similar things we did with the player, right? So I'm going to start typing away and I'm going to explain things as I go, right? Just so we can get this done for today. So one is his public instance variables that I want to have access to the enemy. So we can modify his speed and all that kind of stuff, right? So one is a public float variable for speed. And right now, we're going to make it 0.5f, right? Equals to, we're going to change this in a second because 0.5f makes no sense. His public transform, we're going to make, actually, we'll leave that public transform out for a second. This is public speed is the only thing we need right now. We need some private variables, private instance variables. And this is where we get crazy with the private stuff. The privkit instance variables. There we go. Private. We did this last time, but we're going to do this rigid body 2D because it's going to have to do things like move, right? We're going to use force to move them again. So rigid body 2D, and that's equal to an underscore, same as the player. Rigid body 2D, and we're also going to make a private variable for his transform because we want to have access to his transform, which we're going to call transform. With an underscore, of course. Oops. Okay, cool. We also want to do some stuff to check if he's grounded, and we also want to have access to his animator. So let's go to private animator, right? We want to say that we're going to look at his animator. And then we want access to a private Boolean variable to see that is he grounded or not. Because if he's grounded, we're gonna make him run or walk. So right now we're gonna start off grounded as false instead of grounded as true. Right? We can change that later on. Let's make the references. So again, if you remember how we did this last time, we said this dot underscore rigid body 2D is equal to game object dot get component, right? Rigid body 2D. All I'm doing is making an alias to the get component to this component, so we don't have to say game object dot get component rigid body 2D every single time. That's all we're doing. And the same thing for his transform. So transform is equal to game object dot get component, and then it's transform. Again, all I'm doing is making references here. One more time. This dot animator, right, is equal to game object dot get component animator. we've got access to his animator, we've got access to his transform and his rigid body 2D. Okay, so basic stuff. All right, so now in update, we can't do it in update. We need to use fixed update because we're going to have physics effects coming onto him. So there's no more update. It's fixed update. In fixed update, we're going to check to see if he's grounded. So is check if enemy is grounded. If it's true that he's grounded, then what we're going to do is we're going to say if this dot is grounded, right? If that's true, just like we check with the player, if he's grounded, then he can do a couple things. He can jump and he can walk. Let's make him walk first, right? So we're going to say, well then this dot, for now, animator, right? And we're going to set integer. We're going to say anim state, which is what we called it, to 1. So we're going to make him walk. We're going to set up his walk animation. That's the first thing we're going to do. And then what we're going to say is this dot rigid body 2D, right, dot velocity. And again, it's equal to a new vector 2, right? So the rigid body 2D, the velocity of rigid body 2D is going to be a new vector 2, which is going to be his speed, right? We're going to make it so that his speed is the thing that's going to drive him. Okay? So I'm not going to check to see what his maximum speed is. I'm going to multiply his speed, right, by his f factor, if you will, right? So he's got x and y coordinates. I'm not going to make him jump. A vector 2D, right, because all I'm doing is moving in 2 dimensions, right? It's x force and y force. Well, his x force is going to be his speed. So I'm going to say this dot speed, right? And his y force is going to be 0, right? Because right now he's not going to jump, right? So there is no jumping right now. Okay. If he's not running, if he's not grounded for whatever reason, so I'll say else. If I'm not grounded, then you know what? I want to switch my animation state. Let's take this whole line here. And he's not moving anymore, right? So, or he's not jumping anymore because he's not grounded, right? My animator is going to be set for now to 0. So we'll figure that out because that can be interesting if I'm not grounded, right? We have to change his logic when he's jumping. Right now, we're going to say not, okay? So right now, all we're saying is if he's grounded, make him run. And we're going to run at the run speed, which is 0.5f right now, which is nothing. All right, don't worry about that. And we're going to run in one direction to the right, because there is no left and right for him. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to run him off the platform. That's what we're going to do, right? Let's just check this out and see if it works. If everything goes well, then he should not move at all. Right? So he should not move at all. Let's check this out. So why isn't he moving? Well, because he's moving very slow, actually. That's what's happening. Let's check this out. So I'm going to go back to my enemy. And if you notice that the effect, his speed here in the controller, so I'll show you what this is. His speed is 0.5. That makes no sense. Remember, we moved like 50, right, for the enemy. So let's change this to 50 and see what happens with the enemy. My enemy's moving at 50, right? So I'm changing it to 50 and it's not moving. How come? Say that again? He's not a player. He's an enemy. He's moving right away. Well, why? Right? Because if you notice, I move him down, right? He's grounded. If he's grounded, I'm checking to see if he's grounded. And if he's grounded, he's moving. Oh, yeah, we haven't checked to see if he's grounded. How do I know, right? That's the collision I need to make, the collision detection. So we're going to use the same kind of collision detection. If he's on the platform, then he's grounded. We'll use that same collision. We're going to steal that from the player. So we're going to go back to the player. And here's my player controller. Actually, we're going to steal a couple methods from him. But this is the one that I want to use, this on collision stay event, right? So I'm going to copy this one, go back to the enemy, and kind of put that on the bottom. not inside fixed update, that's for sure. So we're saying that if he's colliding with a platform, then he's grounded. And if he's grounded, right, then he's moving. Right, so this is good. Let's try this out now. And he's moving, right? He's moving slow. But the animation's taking advantage of what he's doing. He's moving at 0.5. Let's move him at 50 and see what happens, right? So he's actually moving across the thing. Now that might be a pretty good speed for him. I'll tell you why, right? Let's take a look at his scene, right? So here's the scene, and I'll zoom out, and he keeps falling forever, but somehow he's not falling very fast. How come? He just keeps moving. Well, when I left the platform, right? I mean, I'm still grounded, right? So I've never checked to see if he's not grounded anymore. So I have to make it so that when he leaves the platform, right, his grounding is false. So how do I do that? Well, there's on collision stay, and there's an on collision exit to make him fall. So let's try this out. So a couple new collision detections. Let's go back to this, right? And now we know that 5 is no good, or 0.5. So let's change this to 50 for now. So we're going to hard code it in, and as a default. And we need to add another kind of collision state here. Let's add this in, where we're going to say, well, if he's left the platform, right? So instead of on collision stay, we're going to say on collision exit. When he leaves the platform, on collision exit 2D. I've just copied the on collision stay, and I'm checking to see if he's leaving the platform. If it's true, then this grounded is equal to false. So now that's a kind of a simple way of checking to see if that's done. Let's check and see what happens. So he's falling, right? Boom. He's moving. Oh, wait. It got reset. Make sure that everything gets reset back to normal. He's falling. He's moving. Right here he is, very slowly. And let's see what happens on the scene. He's running. Then the platform is running pretty slow too, by the way. Not sure if I want to make him that slow. But for now, the reason why I want to put him, I want to see him fall, right? So now he falls forever, right? Because he fell off the platform. Okay, so player, the enemy moves. Let's make this a little faster. Let's see if 100 is good. Maybe 100 is too fast. Because remember, the player's moving pretty fast. 100 looks like it's a little better, right? So I think maybe we'll change to 100. Let's go back to our code here and go to the top and say my movement is 100. So it's not too fast. It's not as fast as the player. Like the player's moving 3 times as fast, right? But you know, that's all he's doing right now. He's moving across the screen. But how do we know if the player actually, or the enemy, is going to? How do we change him around to kind of move him in the opposite direction, right? Well, we do need the same kind of flip animation or flip thing that we did before. So when we transform it on the local scale, right? We check to see if he's facing, and then we flip him around the other side. We can do the same kind of idea for changing directions. So we say if we can check if this transform local scale x is equal to 1, and if it is, then we want to flip him the other way. If not, then we want to flip him to normal, right? So that's kind of the thing that we want to put in there. Let's add that in really quickly. So I'm going to say, here's my private void flip animation. Flip. And what I want to do here in my flip is I want to say something like this. If this dot transform, right, dot local scale dot x is equal to 1, that means he's already going in the right direction before we flip, going to the right. There's another way to do it. If that's true, then I want to flip him, right? And I'm going to say that, well, this dot transform dot local scale, right, is equal to new vector 2, vector 3. We'll make it a vector 3, where it's minus 1f, 1f, and 1f. Otherwise, else, he's not going in the right direction, and we want to flip him back. So that's the other way we can do it. instead of having a direction variable, where we did last time. So that's kind of our flip animation. But now there has to be a way to check the flip. And this is where we have to check something called, do I have ground ahead? And we do that with using line casting. I don't have the ability to do that right now, right? Because there's just no time. I've run out of time at 6:21. But the next time we get together, I know it's going to be beyond the time, but I'll finish up this little game. Because remember, look, I got the enemy. I've got the player. He's running around. You can make a level, right? I mean, you're right there. You've already got the ability to create text and score. I mean, really, apart from adding in, tiles, a tile map for this guy, I mean, you pretty much got everything you need. So let's end it there for today. And when we get back next day, which will be next week, I'll go into more detail about some tile maps and stuff like that. And we'll get into the next assignment.